Situational leadership. There are many models for situational leadership. I put a few of them up on the board here behind me. You don't have to read them, so get your nose off the screen there. That can be embarrassing. But you need to know that there are many models for situational leadership. The thing that these models all have in common, however, is that they are all, and this sounds hokey but true, they are all situational. And what that means is that the application of these models depends on the situation in which you are applying them. What people tend to do when they think of situational leadership is they will pigeonhole people into a quadrant or a box or a continuum of some sort, depending on the model, and leave the people there without realizing that in different situations, the people may be in different areas of the model. So let me give you an example of something like this. I like to use Hersey and Blanchard's scale of task maturity. Paul Hersey and Ken Blanchard wrote this. It was many years ago, but it still holds true today. And this is a theory that I've used in application an awful lot along with colleagues of mine. But the model basically looks like this. There are two axes. And one axis here deals with the person's willingness. The other axis deals with the person's ability. And now you notice I put low willingness on the right and high willingness up here on the left. I do that to tick off math people. But also notice that I did put low down at the bottom for ability and high at the top, because if I inverted those, that would tick me off, and I try not to do that. So low willingness, low ability, high ability. So we look at any given situation where we're working with somebody, and we ask, what is their level of willingness and what's their level of ability? If their willingness and their ability are both high, according to Hersey and Blanchard, the way we work with them is collaboratively. Makes sense? However, there are situations that you'll get into where somebody's willingness may be low, let's make their willingness high, but their ability is low. So they really want to do this, they just don't necessarily know how. And in that situation, we're looking for training. We want to get into a leadership relationship with them where we provide training for them. On occasion, we'll find somebody that isn't really willing to do something, but they could do it very easily because they're very able. In those situations, what we're looking for is a way to motivate them. We're looking for motivation. And there are rare occasions where somebody doesn't want to do it, nor can they do it. And sometimes we have to get into a directive mode with them, where we are directing them to do something. Now, I can give you an example out of my own career, very early on, where somebody applied this to me. And I use this example because it really shows how situational this is. I'm only one person. I was only one person at the time, but 4 different situations. My first year of teaching, the principal, very knowledgeable man, very experienced person as a leader, came to me and said, I would like you to coach junior high girls basketball. And I said, wow, that really sounds cool. I'd love to do that. Is that the game with the orange ball? And the principal's response, of course, knowing this matrix, knew that I was very willing, high willingness, but I didn't have the ability. I was very low. So what did I need? I needed training, which he did. He hooked me up with the high school varsity basketball coach, who I had the basic skills. I could dribble a ball and I could shoot layups and things like that. But reality was I knew nothing about executing offenses and defenses and things like that. But the high school coach helped me with that, which was really cool. We actually had a great season. We went 9-2 that year, mostly because of their previous knowledge and not what I added to it, but we had a good time. So he went for training for me. Now, in my first teaching position, I was a music teacher. So one of the things that he really wanted me to do, the same principal, he came to me and said, I would like you to have your pep band at every home boys basketball game. Now bear in mind, this was before you had pep band at girls basketball too. Yes, I'm old, I know it. But they wanted me to have the pep band at all of the boys' basketball games. And I said, wow, that's an awful lot. I said, I would do 5 of them, but doing all of them is just overkill. And I explained that, you spend a lot of time preparing that music when you could be preparing more quality music than what you would play at pep band, etc. And we had that whole discussion. So here was a situation where I had low willingness. I had the ability to do it. I could prepare the band and do that. It wasn't a difficult task. I could do it, but I didn't want to. So what did he look for? Motivation. What did he do? Well, said, we're going after a bond issue here, and part of that new building that we're looking, or new addition that we're looking at putting on there, is going to be a band room. It would really help to sell the bond and get you the band room if your band was at these basketball games playing in front of the public. I said, okay, that made sense. So I was motivated. Okay, another situation that same year. We were going to be developing for the first time a fine arts curriculum. And he came to me and said, I'd really like to have you on that committee. I said, wow, I'd really like to be on that committee. Okay, I'd like to learn more about some of the other fine arts, but I'd also like to have music represented very well in the curriculum, etc. And happy to do it. Okay, in that situation, he collaborated with me. There wasn't any motivation needed. I didn't need to be trained. I knew basically what I was doing in the music area, met with others, and collaboratively we built a really nice curriculum. I had the ability, had the willingness. Spring rolled around. Okay, I'm still me, and he's still the same principal. Spring rolled around, and he comes up to me and says, hey, I want you to coach junior high track. And I said, no way. I said, A, I'm fat, I don't run fast, and B, I think track is stupid. And now, here I am, low willingness, don't want to do it, low ability, okay, I ran once, I got tired, didn't like it. All right, low ability, low willingness. What he said to me, don't mention those things to your team when you meet with them tomorrow afternoon. So he was directive. And by the way, we had a good track season. I had a good time, they had a good time. But it took some very serious direction to get me to want to do that and to be able to do that. Now it did involve some training as I moved away from this low willingness thing into a higher level of willingness. It involved some training. Okay, I had never done anything like that before, but there were people there that could help me. So anyway, that's a good application of this model. And again, it's situational because had he pigeonholed me into one of these things that always needs training or can always be collaborative with or always has to be motivated, it wouldn't have worked because the situation was different. Now, in applying this with some of my colleagues that I've worked with in the past, we speculate that there probably ought to be another axis on this, a z-axis here, which is really hard to draw on a flat screen monitor, but a z-axis that deals with not willingness or ability, but the person's ability to work with others. Okay, because somebody might be very able to do something, very willing to do it, but they don't work and play well with others. And that makes the task difficult in those situations. So we've speculated that there should be another axis here, and that's something to think about as you're doing this. Where you put that person in for that task may be dependent upon their ability to work with others. We actually wanted to call that the A axis, but for ability to work with others, but we didn't. So bear that one in mind. Most of you have taken or will take supervision. And this has some very clear applications in supervision. In there you have learned or will learn about Glickman's model of developmental supervision. Okay, in Glickman's model, he has 4 what I call modalities. Actually, Glickman has other terminology for it, but he's not adopted mine yet. No, actually, he probably never will. But he calls directive control, which means you basically tell the people what they're going to do, and they do it. Directive informational, which means you give them information in a directive manner, which tells them how to do things as opposed to what to do. You give them information to help guide them through a learning process or an improvement process or whatever. His next level is collaborative, which means you work, of course, collaboratively with these persons. And their highest level for Glickman is non-directive, which means they do their thing, you don't need to intervene at all, and they're successful, you're happy, and it's a good process. This is a continuum from directive control up to non-directive. However, it really lays itself very nicely over Hersey and Blanchard's scale of task maturity, where on the low end of willingness and ability, where you are directive, you have directive control. However, what Hersey and Blanchard's scale here doesn't always address is what you have when you have a little bit of willingness or a little bit of ability, maybe just below average ability. And what Glickman can bring in is a model to overlay that, which will address some of those areas. If somebody is pretty willing and have fairly high ability, but not real high ability, you probably don't want to be non-directive with them. You don't want to just, okay, go play. You want to be collaborative with them. Now, they put this whole quadrant as collaborative. But if they're down here, or just below that, you may need to provide information. There's all sorts of different variables along this continuum that can play into Hersey and Blanchard's model. So think about that as you are working with people and moving school districts through improvement processes, etc. Where do people fit on a situation, not overall? They're not always here, here, or here, or here, or here. In a given situation, they could be in any one of these quadrants or anywhere along this continuum.